Hello and welcome to Speaking Out on Financial Abuse. Stories of survival and hope after financial abuse and a marriage or romantic partnership. I'm your host, Lori G., and today's guest is Lutz Herrington. As owner of Sherrington Financial Fitness, a business consulting and accounting firm specializing in strategic planning and accounting for all types of businesses, Sherry found herself talking to women about their personal finances and began seeing the need to empower women both personally and financially. When she started writing her book about recovering from a financially abusive partnership, Sherry realized that her experience could help other women recover as well and formed her organization, Strong Women Thriving. Strong Women Thriving focuses on giving women the know-how to become savvy with their own finances, especially after experiencing financial abuse. In addition to writing her book, Sherry also creates courses specifically for those who have experienced economic abuse, and she is a sought-after speaker and expert on the subject of financial abuse in romantic partnerships. Sherry, Happy New Year, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Lori. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
So where in the world are you now, and where are you originally from?
Well, I'm a California girl, through and through. Born and raised in California, still in California. Love it here. Probably never leave.
North or South California? You in the cooler parts or the hotter parts?
I was born and raised on the Central Coast in San Luis Obispo County. And I am currently in Northern California in the Redwoods of Sonoma County.
Ah, okay. Now, I love your website, strongwomenthriving.com. It has so many multitudes of resources that have been a huge help to me personally and to so many women out there. And you talk in your February blog earlier this year about family ties to financial abuse, that how women especially view money as adults is very relevant to how money is perceived in their household growing up. And you mentioned a little bit about your own mother's financial struggles when you were a child. Can you tell me a little bit more about what your financial childhood was like?
Yes, thank you for the compliments on the website. I do love to write, and I'm finding quite a voice. It's where I like to express myself, is in the written word, but this is fun too. Yeah, my mother and my father divorced when I was just a little bit older than 2. I was sexually abused by my father, and I was the person who spoke up in the family and brought that to the attention of the adults. And my parents ended up divorcing. And my mother was a single mom of 5 in the 60s. And of course, you couldn't go to the courts and say, my husband, a soon-to-be ex-husband, is sexually abusing my children. You would never get custody of your children, not in the 60s. So my mom had to battle to get us, and then, of course, to get child support back in the day. And it really wasn't a whole lot. She had been trained as a social worker. She had an MSW. My mother had a master's. And she ended up going into real estate, which is commission only. So you can imagine the ups and downs and the lean months and the flush months and that kind of thing. And then anytime my dad was unemployed, there would be no child support. So it was a very unstable financial house, if you will. Mm-hmm. And the story that I always tell, because I always ask people their money stories, and I think it's a really critical thing to go back to when we start talking about mindset in particular, is that we were given a 50 cents a week allowance, but we had to roll the pennies to get paid. So my mom would bring home, dump her change in a pile, and my younger brother and I would roll those into 50-cent rolls, and that would be our allowance. So the way that my brain interpreted that, which I was able to pull out many years later during financial coaching, was that I think I'm only worth pennies. And so when I could overcome that and found that little link to my past, that's when my income dramatically increased. I think most of us who end up in abusive relationships grew up in some sort of abusive household. Mm-hmm. I really believe there's a very, very strong tie to that. And so what happened was I married a man who was abusive, and he was verbally, emotionally, and financially abusive. So then it was getting through the recognition that this marriage was no longer working, filing for the divorce. And it was when I came out of that marriage, the short version of my story is that I went through a divorce, a bankruptcy, 4 foreclosures, unemployment, starting a business, and a move in 2.5 years with a preteen in tow. And I started over. I had nothing to my name but a used car that was thankfully paid for and $2,000 in a personal IRA that my husband had not been able to gamble away when he gambled away the rest of our investment.
Were you the breadwinner? Were you the breadwinner in your marriage?
I was not.
That's a surprise.
I was the stay-at-home mom for many years. Mm-hmm.
So he was both the breadwinner and the financial gambler in the relationship.
Yes.
And how long?
I actually managed the money, but he, was a spender, and I always called him a maverick. He had big dreams, and we ended up, buying and fixing and flipping houses, but we did it right before the 2008 crash. So yes, we got caught with that too, but we had previously completely overextended ourselves, and he would quit work. I think in the 11 or 12 years we were married, he had like 6 jobs and was unemployed 6 or 7 times in between.
When did you realize your marriage was one of financial abuse?
I don't think my awareness really came until I walked away. And a friend of mine said, I can't believe you kept things going as long as you did, because I was the one who managed the money. So he would earn, quit working, we'd be broke. We'd run up the credit cards. He'd go back to work. I'd have to try to keep things going, and I kept it going an awfully long time.
Yeah.
And I honestly don't remember when I first came across the term financial abuse, but it was not one that I was aware of prior to leaving my marriage.
Did you attempt any kind of marriage counseling? And if so, did any kind of comment ever been made to you that if you mentioned your financial situation, that
we were
is or
in
not
marriage?
A problem?
Yeah, we were in marriage counseling prior to the divorce. And I remember having an experience, and now I would call it gaslighting. I didn't know the term at the time, but getting into an argument with him one night because the therapist had said, talk about what's going on, so I brought up something that was not working for me, turned into a big fight. By the end of the fight, it was my problem. I had caused the problem. And I went over to a girlfriend's house for a glass of wine, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like, how is it me when I'm asking him, like, I'm saying this is not working, and suddenly it's my problem. I caused it. And she said, yeah, I know. And I said, I feel like I'm living with like a sociopath. And I don't even know the definition of a sociopath. So I went home and I looked it up, and he had like 9 out of 15 traits or something. So I called our therapist that we were seeing together, and I said, can I see you alone, please? And she said yes. And I went in there and I said, I feel like we're talking about everything but the white elephant in the middle of the room. He's in here bitching about his mom and complaining about whatever. And I'm at home trying to make these steps and getting gaslit and all this stuff. And her response was, well, he's not a sociopath. When I said, I think he's, could he be? She said, he's not a sociopath, but he could be borderline personality disorder. So I went home and looked that up. He had 10 of 11 of those traits.
Oh, boy. What was the one he missed? I wonder.
Suicidal tendencies, which I think he's had since.
Wow. That is unbelievable.
So that was the straw that broke my back, because I knew that I couldn't fix him. Up until then, of course, I was trying to fix him. That's what we do as codependents who come out of abusive childhoods. We want to fix everybody. And I knew I couldn't fix him. And I knew I needed to save myself and my son. And that's when I decided to leave.
Well, and all abusers will turn, at least from my experience, every abuse issue into an emotional issue, especially a financial abuse. If you can turn a financially abusive issue into an emotional issue, well, you're just not a team. You're not supporting me. You're not bailing me out. You're not, it really, once you fall into that funnel, it's really hard to get out of it. And so you got out with a catastrophic end. So where did you go from there that led you to start proactively seeking to help women who had been under the same economic abuse and that you have been through?
Well, it was many years later, because I was just trying to survive. And I was raising my son alone, basically, because I couldn't count on my ex to provide child support. He was not working. I just basically had to pick up all the slack and do everything. And I'd just started my business. That was kind of my ticket out. And I just worked my ass off for many years. And when
did you have trouble finding resources when you started really looking into this more?
It was more about the pride of not accepting them. I remember talking to one of my son's school counselors who said, we can give you a voucher to go to Kmart so you can buy him some clothes. And that was literally the only handout I took, except I had a very dear friend. She's still a friend, and she gave me $100 a month and for a couple years. And she said, use this for you and Emmett to do something fun. Don't pay the bills with it. And that was huge. But I did go down and try to apply for whatever the resources were. And it was so complicated and so overwhelming and so humiliating that I never did. I really just put my nose down and worked. I come from a hardworking family. We just have this incredible work ethic. And that's how I did it. And I managed to, start this business and get it, Sherrington Financial Fitness, start it and get it profitable pretty quickly. I was technically on unemployment for like the first 6 months, maybe a little less after the divorce or the separation. But I really didn't go looking for resources. I was pull yourself up by your bootstraps and make it work. That was my motto.
So
and I did.
I guess
I didn't get to writing the book. Excuse me. You asked a second part to that question. I didn't get to writing the book until, I want to say it was about 5 years. I'd been living in an apartment and they wanted to triple my rent if I didn't sign another year lease. And I was like, I don't want to sign another year lease. And I managed to buy a house. I had a very smart CPA and a very excellent mortgage broker. And between the two of them, I got an FHA loan with 3.5% down.
Wow. That's great.
I had money saved to pay my tax bill, and my CPA said, put it on a payment plan and use that money for your down payment. And within 60 days of when we got the notice that our rent was going up, I was able to buy a house. And this was when the market was really hot. It was a hard time to buy a house in California, and I managed to buy a house. And it was after that I think I finally started thinking about, it's time to tell my story. And the book, it's not published yet. Hopefully that's one of the 25 goals, but I basically barfed it onto paper.
Yeah.
And then I went to a writer's retreat, and the team there were like, this is excellent, but it's memoir, make it about financial abuse. So I rewrote it about recovering from financial abuse. And to answer your question, like, when did I really realize, or when did I decide what to do? I had always, when I started Sherrington Financial Fitness, I always had what I called an inside mission and an outside mission. And the outside mission, of course, was helping small businesses succeed, because that's, as an accounting firm, what I was able to do. But my inside mission, I found I just ended up, during all the networking and all the coffee meetings and all these women that I was meeting, I would just naturally start talking to them about money. And I would find out, and I would start coaching them even without any formal training. So I realized my inside mission was empowering women personally and financially. And after I wrote the book, the first draft, I realized that inside mission had found its home.
Yeah.
And that's really the mission of Strong Women Thriving, is to empower women personally and financially.
So then you launched your website from there. And when did you start developing the idea of doing classes or courses, or actually coming up with a structured program or class that a woman can sign up for and get some financial literacy?
It's been a crooked path. This is my second business. So obviously having to support myself and keep the business going. Strong Women Thriving has been sort of a second tiered business. So it gets love when I have time. And it's been myself and a few virtual assistants over time. And I'm not really sure how we decided. I think I've always loved to teach. And I do a lot of teaching in my other business. So I think it was a natural progression to look into developing courses. It's taken a little bit to get there, but yes, we're there. So I think, It was just over time.
So as you started developing this, were there any kind of special mentors or were there people that were inspirational to you? Because you certainly become a big inspiration to other people like myself. Where did you get that kind of spark?
My mother has always been my biggest mentor. Think about a woman in the 60s. She was born in 1930, and she did have a master's degree, which was unusual at
Very
that time.
unusual, yeah.
And she raised 5 children virtually on her own. She did remarry when I was like 2nd grade or 3rd grade, but she was mom and he was stepdad,
Mm-hmm.
And she just raised us to know we could do whatever we wanted to do. And, in a very feminist household with strong women. I have 2 sisters.
I was going to ask you how many girls, how many boys out of the 5
2
kids?
sisters, 2 brothers. Yeah. And so I think she's the biggest one. But with that feminist background, of course, I always go to all the greats, Gloria Steinem, and even back to Susan B. Anthony. I mean, you could just name them all. But I think what I want to share here, if I can, it's not really specific to your question, but one of the things that I've realized as I've been going through this process, and I don't know if this has happened to you too, Lori, or not, as you've realized you're on this journey and you're wanting to share, I get a little bit of imposter syndrome. And I think, why am I the person who should be out there trying to change the world? Because in my mind, this is, let's start a movement. That's how I see what I'm doing is we need to, break this open. In a lot of ways, it's a hidden epidemic. I think the term financial abuse, I mean, when I started this, Lori, there wasn't even a definition of financial abuse. I had to write a definition of financial abuse. Yeah. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm so excited and I'd get this burst of energy and I'd get things going. And then I'd be like, oh, wow, but there's the NNEVD. They're doing a lot of work. And there's, these national people, these big names. How can I compete with all of that? And to go to your point about mentors is what I realized is, yeah, all those greats are super important on our journey of just the rise of feminine and female rights over the whole history of the world, if you will. But we all have a voice, and every one of us has a different piece to share. And that's why I love that you're doing podcasts and you've encouraged me to do the same, and hopefully I'll get there. But your approach is a little bit different than mine. But we can collaborate. We can talk to one another. We can share resources. We can help one another. And that collaboration spreads the word. So when I get down about this and I get stressed and frustrated with, okay, I've got to run this full-time business with Sherrington. How do I keep this going? I look at not trying to be the biggest name in the history of feminism or in the history of financial abuse, but just being my own voice and doing what I can for those that I can impact and try to grow my following and continue to expand and to share my message. Because, like I said, as far as, who else is out there and what are they doing? When I wrote the manuscript and started talking to publishers and agents, and they want to look at comp books, and there really isn't a comp book out there to what my book is going to be.
Oh, yeah.
Because most of them are written by therapists. Some are written by men, and they're more about financial abuse of elders. There's more on the topic of elders than on intimate partner abuse. And I have been through it, and I have a financial background. Yes. So that qualifies me uniquely to be the voice of an expert, if you will. I sometimes am challenged to see myself that way, but I hope that, that's who I'm becoming.
Well, and often when people write their autobiographies or biographies about being in an abusive relationship, the financial aspect is often secondary, unless it's a very big celebrity. Like, for instance, Halle Berry is an actress. She's the only one I know of that has very publicly come out about her financially abusive marriage and that it was a primary issue. But normally it's secondary. And they'll usually focus on that. And that's the issue also with first responders and police is by the time they get through the door, it is a physical issue. And they very often don't even document that there was financial abuse as well. So you must
The other public figure you might want to think about researching, because you seem to be an expert on research, is Tina Turner. Because when she passed, I read a lot about her experience, and talk about financial abuse. He tried to make her name so she couldn't use her own name.
Wow. That's amazing. And
I was like, what? There's a new one for my 9 key indicators. What the hell is that, right?
I would love to see, you're talking about launching your podcast, which I hope you do. And for anybody, we get on her website, strongwomanthriving.com. She actually has some episodes up on video. They're really terrific with some really good people talking about ways to start over, for everything from buying a manufactured home to learning how to redo your finances. And when did you realize, whoa, I've got something here? Oh, I'm getting interest from people. I'm actually helping people. When did that come?
I don't know that it has. I mean, I think this might sound strange, but I think you reaching out and saying, let me interview you, was like a turning point. Like, oh, maybe I am becoming the authority. Like, and part of it is that my agent, bless her heart, she's lovely and she really wants to publish this book. She's like, you need to have a following in the 5 to 6 digits. And I'm looking at our group on Facebook, Women Surviving Financial Abuse. And I'd love to shout that out as well. And, we're trying to get to 1,000 after years and years and years. So it's sort of that imposter syndrome kind of eating away at me a little bit more, I guess. And I think also because I've basically been doing all this for free. Sherrington Financial has really funded what I've done for Strong Women Thriving to this point until the launch of the new course, which hopefully has just happened and will keep going through 25. And I have a vision for a much bigger course, but I need to make some money off of it to continue doing it. And I think when the money comes, then I will feel more legitimate, if you will, if that answers your question.
Well, what makes you so invaluable to, I guess, the world of financial abuse survivors is that you are a centralized resource in the United States. And I recently had a group on the show who's a centralized resource in Australia. But you have done such a thorough job, number one, of having all the domestic resources. If anyone out there is looking for help in the United States, within your own state, of where you can go very quickly to find resources, this is the go-to website you want to be at, because Sherry has actually by state listed every single individual resource. It's really amazing what you've done. And so you've got this pretty comprehensive site now going for you. What are you starting to see now coming into this new year we have of 2025?
Well, thank you for the compliment on the website. We've worked very hard to build that resource center, and that was terrific. That's where I felt like I could be that central hub, and hopefully I am or can be, along with you and all the other voices out there. But I'm really excited for 25 because I see the courses really starting to give some really concrete benefits, that financial education and understanding some really basic information, but from the perspective of having endured financial abuse, you're going to come out your finances different. There's a lot of financial resources in the world, but I think mine has the secret sauce, as my book coach gave me. The secret sauce is financial abuse. And because I've been through it and I have that financial background, I think I really try really hard to address that. And so I'm excited about the course. And then, of course, moving forward with how are we going to publish this book, because it really is overdue. Really is overdue. So I'm hoping there'll be some progress on that in 25. We'll see where it goes.
Do you think women are ashamed to admit that they need financial literacy? Coming out of a financially abusive relationship, and you're saying that you really go back to the basics and a lot of it. Do you think that helps take the shame out of it? Because it is hard to go back. I never learned how to check, balance the checkbook at 60 years old.
I think there's probably a lot of it, depending, as financial abuse crosses all age ranges, all socioeconomic statuses, everything, colors, heights, sizes, everything. Doesn't matter who you are if you've been subjected to financial abuse. And so speaking to that broad of an audience, sometimes it's hard to know who needs what.
Yeah.
But I do believe that starting with the fundamentals, starting with the basics, we will address a large group of those women. And yeah, great. If you don't need it, I'm happy that you don't need it. Believe me. But I know that a lot of women in financial abusive situations have not had control of their own money and are not confident with how to handle it because of the abuse takes your self-esteem away. And so you go out on your own afterwards and you're like, well, I don't know what the hell to do. I haven't done it in 20 years.
Yeah, you've lost confidence. Yeah.
You've lost confidence. Yeah. So it's not that they've never done it. It's that maybe they don't know how to do it in this day and age, or that confidence isn't there. So it's kind of a combination of trying to target the most basic steps first and then moving more into the mindset and the coaching approach to, you know, the shame and the all the fallout that comes when you go through a divorce and you have to start over.
I think just being told you're good at something, you know, as you were just saying, you know, you could have had some literacy, you get married, all of a sudden you've lost control of your entire life in terms of financial and otherwise. And you've also lost the confidence. And maybe, you know, if it is more of a refresher for some people, you could gain that new confidence maybe you haven't had before just by having someone say, you know, you know how to do this. You could be really good at this. And it just, it seems like it takes so little, you know, at least for me to go, wow, really? You know, I definitely relate to that imposter syndrome. Like, really? Really?
Yeah,
I know what I'm doing?
think we all need that. And that's, to me, the movement. It's starting the movement of saying we have all been through this. And I know that there are a lot more people out there than are signed up for my Facebook group or that are listening to this podcast. And I think it is breaking open that shame and saying, you're not in this alone.
Yeah.
We are here too. And I think that's where, you know, my big thing is to pay it forward. That is my mission in life. My purpose in life is to pay it forward, because I have this background, but I also have the strength. I have the financial education and savvy, and it just needs to stop being hidden. We need to just be like, yeah, in a room, you know, what do they say? 1 in 3 women have been abused, and 99% of those enduring one of the what we call traditional abuses, sexual, verbal, emotional, or physical, there's a 99% chance they've had financial abuse too. So why are we not talking more about the financial abuse? Like you said, it sort of gets a back seat.
It's not documented,
It's so hard to track sometimes. How can you prove that your husband signed that document, especially now with electronic signatures? How can you prove that? It's really hard to prove some of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in a court of law, because it isn't what's true. It's what you can prove. And sometimes they can just prove you're crazy.
Exactly. And
even though that's not true, you know.
Exactly. And so I think that just having other people to talk to encourage you to say, hey, I've been there, I've done that, and look at where I am now. I have fully financially recovered, except fully funding my retirement. That's still in the works, but everything else is great. I own my own home. I bought a new one. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, like being the example.
Yeah.
I think.
And I hope anyone out there listening who is under financial abuse or just coming out of this and you are starting over, you know, to be hearing Sherry's story and what Sherry has accomplished, you can do that as well. You can recover from this type of domestic abuse. And as Sherry's saying, it's just been hidden for too long. And now we got a couple big mouths out there trying to say something. So, Sherry, it has been amazing. And I'm so flattered and grateful to have you on the show. I hope you come back again when you're ready for your next courses to be announced and your next programs coming up. I would love for you to be like a regular guest and come on. But I ask this of everybody, what is your final tip for somebody listening right now who is under financial abuse and still in a relationship?
I always say get therapy. And I say document. Before you leave, get access to as many records as you possibly can. And then as soon as you get out, change your password. all your passwords.
Change your name, your social security.
Yeah, I mean, change as much as you can. I mean, sometimes you have to survive physically. We know the rate of violence and death of spouses, and it's horrific. But for financial purposes, get as much documentation as you can and stash cash, because depending on where you live, I'm in California, and it's a community property state. So anything you have in a bank account, whether it's in your name or it's a joint account, it's still going to be counted in that divorce. So I would say stash cash. And I know that's not something that people really think sounds great to say, try to skirt the law. But in my perspective, obviously you have to morally feel good about what you choose to do. But in my perspective, it's self-defense.
Oh, yeah.
You have been economically beaten down. And if you choose to take money where you can and put it in a coffee can in the back of the closet or with a very, very, very trusted friend or family member, then do it. Because when you get out, what you're not going to have is resources. Especially, and I've seen this in cases of very wealthy women. When the divorce is filed, then the income stream gets shut off and you have to go to court and you have to fight to get it. And that's the status quo that I talk about in some of my interviews.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to start building your resources before you leave.
Well, it's like you're in prison and you're going to have to come up with your own bail money, really.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. What is your final tip to someone listening who is out of a financial abusive relationship, but really at the beginning and just not sure what to do next?
Join our Facebook group, Women Surviving Financial Abuse.
Excellent answer.
And read all our blogs and join our community and get that support. And look at the courses that I offer and see if any of them are going to be a good fit for you. And just find support. Find people that will not tell you made a mistake. Find people who will not say he was right, you were wrong. Surround yourself with people who legitimize your feelings, because we have all been gaslit. We've all been told we're the crazy ones, and it's just not true.
Yeah.
You are powerful. You are awesome. You are amazing, and you can change your life. But you need your cheerleading squad around you. You need resources. You need encouragement. You need therapy. You need all that stuff, but you can do it.
And Sherry, you are one beautiful lady who has absolutely done that and absolutely been. I think someone's going to be on a podcast someday saying, my inspiration was Sherry Herrington. I could even personally say that as Lori. So, Sherry,
thank you, Lori.
I can't thank you enough. I'm so happy to have had you on the show today. Again, this is Sherry Herrington. She is an author, advocate, and financial expert. She is the founder of Strong Women Thriving. You can find her website, strongwomenthriving.com. And I hope to see you back again.
Thank you, Lori. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for all you're doing for these women, too.